Hello and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we bring you all kinds of tips, tricks and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. I just want to give a shout out to Rounded, our sponsor, because I know for me, my quarterly BAS used to be so stressful. But I love Rounded because everything is there and so tidy, Rach.
I know, no more shoe boxes of receipts. I also really love that my accountant can log into the program remotely and help me with lodgement. Just do it without me needing to even worry about it.
That's what we love.
But best of all, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can save 20% on any annual Rounded plan. Even if you've got the Rounded discount last year, you can get it this year as well.
Awesome. The show notes always have the details.
Yeah.
Hey, Rach, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this episode because it's something we've never done before.
I know, it's a bit different for us, isn't it? So It's taken quite a bit of prep, though.
It has. But the whole gist of it was we wanted to turn the mic over to our listeners, didn't we? So we asked them, one question, what really kicked you in the ass in your freelancing career? So something that really kicked you in the ass and that you learned from.
And how you recovered. Yeah.
And how you recovered. And we got so many great stories, didn't we? So
many.
Yeah, you're actually going to hear people telling you their stories in this episode in their own voice, which is great. And then we might have a bit of a chat about it in between.
Yeah, that's the idea. I think we can make this really interesting. And it's so good to hear from real life examples, don't you think?
Absolutely. So we're going to start with Belinda Weaver, who's been a guest before, hasn't she, on the podcast?
She has.
My name is Belinda Weaver and I am a coach to copywriters. One time that freelancing really kicked me in the butt was working for a client who had so many red flags that I ignored. They didn't want to fill out my copywriting brief. They weren't getting back to me with any revisions. They wanted me to copy their competitor websites. And when it all came to an end, they did not pay my invoice and I ended up getting a debt collection agency involved. Now, the real kicker was that I did not have any tangible information about this client apart from their name and their email address, which made it very difficult for the debt collection agency to actually do their job. After that project, I made sure that as part of my client onboarding experience, I collected a lot more information. But even before then, I started paying a lot more attention to those red flags.
Oh gosh, I mean, how many of us have been in that situation, ignoring all those red flags? I still ignore some red flags sometimes with clients.
I actually think when you ignore the red flags, they're the ones that really hurt because you think, I should have known, I should have understood my gut. And I think the longer that you work as a freelancer, the better you are at trusting your gut and going with it.
Absolutely. This is such a great cautionary tale from Belinda. It's about listening to your gut and noting those red flags that come up with clients. But also I loved what she said about, getting that information when you're invoicing people, because you have to be thinking ahead.
Setting up your onboarding properly.
You do. You have to be thinking ahead. If something goes pear-shaped and you don't have a way of making that person accountable or even finding them so you can get paid, so important. So definitely get addresses, ABNs, all of that sort of stuff before you invoice someone.
Yeah. So the next audio grab is from Heather Smith. She's a former guest on the podcast and a regular listener. She shares a cautionary tale that I'm sure we can all relate to a little, because I think we've all been a little seduced by that promise of equity instead of cash. Let's hear her story.
Hi, my name is Heather Smith. I'm an accountant and I write about accounting technology. About a decade ago, I was approached by two brothers with a proposition to co-launch a magazine with them. To my astonishment, they offered me a 23% stake. I enthusiastically dived in, creating and contributing to multiple publications. It appeared to be a massive success, except they never had any money to pay me. As the months rolled on without compensation, I sought legal counsel. By then I was due around $70,000. The lawyers confirmed they had a solid case, but with the brothers operating from abroad, the legal costs could soar beyond $100,000. What did I learn from this, and how did I pick myself up and keep going? I'm an accountant, so I should have known better. I worked with them daily, so I feel like such a fool to be duped like that. Now, I manage my accounts receivable tightly. I invoice quickly with short payment terms. Where possible, I expect payment upfront and demand payment milestones for long-term projects. I offer a variety of ways for businesses to pay me, and I follow up quickly on outstanding debts. If it had been a one-off writing gig, this would never have happened, but the opportunity to co-found a magazine distorted my typical modus operandi.
Her story, was about being duped on this big project. And what really struck me about this was, if you're a bit inexperienced, I think it's easy to be drawn into opportunities that sound amazing but may not have that immediate compensation, or they offer you other options like have some stock options, or the money's coming down the track. Often can happen with startups and things like that. So you jump in and then you find it really hard to extricate yourself. So,
or worse, you've done the work.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Now, I've had a few things when I've done work or done some initial work and then I haven't been paid, or the work has not come. People sometimes are full of all the promises about, this is going to be a huge project, this is going to happen, and it never does. And the worst thing you can do is actually start work before they sign the contract, before they give you a deposit. And that's really what Heather learned from that, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, now she says she manages her accounts more tightly. She invoices really quickly, gets that payment up front when she can, and has those payment milestones, which is really exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah, I get 50% up front whenever it's a client I don't know well, or a small business. Like the corporates, it's sometimes harder, but you sort of know that those big corporates aren't going to go under. So they might have long terms, but the 50% gives you that reassurance. The best lesson I remember was that I had a builder want me to do some work, and I spoke to him, and it sounded really good. I asked for the 50%. Never turned up. And I thought, well, I'm so glad I didn't start work without that 50%. And I thought that saved a lesson, because I never would have got any money.
Yeah. I remember Beck Lambert, who we're going to hear from a bit further on in the podcast. I think she takes 100% if it's $500 or under, or is it under $1,000? And I always thought, wow, that's,
that's ballsy.
But, it does on those smaller jobs. It's probably a really smart move.
And it's really painful to chase for $300 or $400. Like we'll all put in the effort for a $5,000 project or something, but when it's $500, it just gets tedious to send millions of emails chasing. It's harder to get a debt collector, all that sort of stuff. So yes, there is something about being paid up front.
Well, we have another kind of similar story from another freelancer, Sophie, who ended up working with some former colleagues as a sub on an overseas magazine which went into administration. So let's hear what she had to say.
Hi, this is Sophie. Some ex-colleagues overseas set up their own publishing company and made me the sub-editor 1 day a week. It was a beautiful magazine and I loved working from home. But the payments started coming through late, and then not at all. Before I knew it, I'd worked for a year without payment. I suppose I was quite naive and shouldn't have trusted them. They went into administration and kept trading under a new name. The worst part was when I called the administration company and I wasn't even on their list of creditors. That was the part that hurt the most.
Wow.
Because that's a tricky one, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah. Especially if you're working for former colleagues that you have no reason not to trust. That's what really struck me about this. It's such a big lesson to learn as a freelancer, but I think the key is it's hard to do. But if you're not getting paid regularly, or the payments slow down, or they stop altogether, you just down tools.
You stop work.
You just stop, especially if you have at least a month or two, preferably just a month or a few weeks of payments owing.
Yeah, exactly. I had that also with somebody I went to uni with, a similar thing, and I just trusted them. And that was and then I spent ages and ages and never really did get the money. I think I would now, but this was right at the beginning of my career. And I thought, oh my God, lesson learned, because I just thought somebody I went to uni with knew him a little and I just trusted him. But no. Never again. You learn these things once, don't you?
You do. Well, we're going to move on to some stories from some of our listeners who, had their butt kicking moment during really big kind of
world
shifts
events
in the economy or world events like the GFC or COVID. We're going to start with Ed Gandia, who, lost a really big client.
Hey, this is Ed Gandia. My freelance business came to a screeching halt in the summer of 2008. That was the first year of the great financial crisis, and in a matter of months, I lost several clients, including my biggest one, which represented over 50% of my income. It was hard, it was scary, it was demoralizing. Nothing I did to land more business seemed to work. And just when I started to lose hope, I got an email out of the blue from someone I hadn't talked to in years. She used to work for my biggest client, and now she was with a new company, and she wanted to bring me in and meet the vice president of marketing for that company. Now, I was so disillusioned by this point that I had very low expectations, but long story short, this VP hired me within a few days of our meeting, and my first project with them was worth over $19,000. I learned a few important lessons from this experience. First, never give up. Second, never lose hope. Keep your chin up because every day is a new opportunity to try again. And third, and perhaps more important, where you are in your business should not define who you are.
Okay, Ed is such a voice of wisdom, and I just love him. I love that
Me
he
too.
can mention that. He just tells you what it's like. But we've all had a client, maybe not all of us, but I certainly have had a client that made up 50% of my income, and that happened to me in COVID.
Yeah.
And I thought I was really clever because I worked for all these different publishing companies, and then one bought the other.
Right.
And so it ended up being all one client who then,
Yeah.
because it was COVID, froze everything. So all my journalist stuff got frozen, even though I thought I had mitigated stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that really killed me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I think I've spoken on the podcast before about when I was a movie reviewer for 10 years. And then that was my big gig, my huge gig and my main client. And I lost both of those. It was two different magazines. They brought the movies in-house and it was happening across the board. And so many movie reviewers just got wiped at that time. And that was huge for me. And it was really encouraging to hear that even successful business owners like Ed have gone through those tough times. But in his story, the lesson for me is not, and I've learned it, is not having too much of your income centered around one client.
Yeah.
I know that works for some people, but as we've both seen, it can definitely backfire on you. But also I really loved, what he said about never giving up hope, never stop networking or reaching out. And you've got to have that perseverance as a freelancer. Otherwise, you're not going to make it, are you?
What he says in that clip, which I loved, where you are in your business should not define who you are.
Love it.
And I think that sometimes you think, I've had a really quiet week, or I've lost this client because they've taken something in-house, and you think, I'm such a failure. That's a really bad spiral to get into. It's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our next listener also sent in her experience. It was really interesting what she did about it. This is Brooke McCarthy, and it was a COVID butt kicking, wasn't it?
It was.
Hello, my name is Brooke McCarthy. I'm a veteran business coach and a business trainer. The time that freelancing kicked me in the ass was March 2020. I lost about $30,000 worth of booked face-to-face training work, and this was after letting go of a retainer client and with it about $20,000 worth of work. So March 2020, you don't need me here to relive it. It was extremely volatile, and what I learned from that is that rather than leaning back and hibernating and hoping and praying that everything would change and get better, instead, I leaned in and I made myself as relentlessly helpful and useful to my clients and others as I possibly could. And it turned out to be the best year in my business to date.
Okay, so leaning in and being helpful was definitely a key survival tip for many freelancers during the pandemic. So I'm totally with Brooke on this one. And we did a whole episode on that, didn't we?
We did. And I think when something like that happens, I think Brooke did what many of us do. You panic and you say yes to everything. I said yes, although it did get me through COVID, I said yes to a social media gig, which I never would do, and it's not my core strength, and I struggled with that. But I said yes to things that weren't really me.
I know. Well, getting back to that episode, I don't know how many of you out there listened to that, but we had people reach out to us and say, that was so good. It made me think differently about what work I could get still and how I could help my clients during the pandemic. So it was about reaching out to clients and saying, I'm here, let's work through what you need together. And in that way, a lot of people still manage to keep clients and, you know, keep money coming in. And in Brooke's case, it turned out to be her best year yet, which really goes to show that you can make money and profit even during really bad times. So
exactly. Often people in bad times, and we've heard this at the summit last year when Jess Muddett talked about the AI thing, which is probably our current copywriting crisis. And she said she's just turned it into an opportunity to write about AI because everyone's talking about it. And so she's actually got an income from AI, which is a whole different way of looking at it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to turn to something that's come up on the podcast a couple of times, burnout.
Yes.
And we're going to listen to a couple of people and how their biggest lesson was around, you know, suffering burnout and what they did.
Hi, this is Rebecca Lambert. You might know me from the freelance jungle or my freelance business, Unashamedly Creative. A time that freelancing really kicked my ass was when I was ignoring the fact that I was burning out, and I tried to disguise it under collaboration. Sometimes it can be really tempting to double up with people and start working with them on projects when really you're looking for a stretch goal and you haven't addressed what's going on. And that's what was happening for me. So now I've learned when I'm not feeling so great about freelancing to look within.
Oh gosh, this really spoke to me because burnout is a fear for me and so many freelancers I know. And although it seems counterintuitive, I totally get what Beck did, which was to add more to her plate and embrace new shiny things and think that collaborations would be the way forward, you know, and that would be the answer. But like, remember when we had Dex Randall on the burnout coach on the podcast? And
he was great.
He said, you've really got to look at why you're burning out and the reason behind your burnout in order to get through it. So yeah, I loved that. And that's what Beck did in the end.
And I think there's a bit of being self-aware that you have to know when you're getting close to burnout, because it's easier to stop it a few weeks or months ahead when you go, oh no, I am, this is what I'm doing. Otherwise you're back in that space and you think, why didn't I should have said no to something a month ago. And it's so much harder to extricate yourself when you're right in it. So getting to understand yourself and what is going to make you stressed, and certainly doing too much. Sometimes it's doing a type of project, like as I said, social media really stresses me out. It's not my thing, so it pushes me.
So you get to that unmotivated, don't want to get out of bed stage, and that can just accelerate, can't it, into a really bad
things
place.
Like that stress you. You know what stresses you?
Yeah,
I think so. I think you just sort of think, no, this sort of project, or it might be that things that stress you might be ones which I know I find stressful sometimes when there's too many stakeholders in it. When you're dealing with 5 different people and everyone has a different opinion, that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of thing that makes me stress.
Yes.
And certainly certain topics, I've just recovered from Louise Milligan, but certainly things that deal with violence against women and things like that, I find them really confronting. If I do anything on that, I need to build in recovery time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, our next listener had a similar burnout experience.
Anthony Chansamuth,
My name is Anthony Chansamuth. I'm a fractional chief marketing officer, marketing consultant, and content creator at Authentic Marketer. Freelancing has kicked my butt on multiple occasions. After 6 years of hard work without proper pay, feeling burnt out, and disillusioned by the industry's direction, I realized I was on the wrong path. So I took a drastic step. I stopped working for 4 months without pay to figure out what truly mattered to me. My wife and I traveled around the US and Canada for a month before landing in Da Nang, Vietnam. I wrote, swam daily, and zipped around Da Nang on my scooter, enjoying Vietnamese coffee and life in paradise with my wife. I took time to just be, enjoy life, and reassess. There, I decided to work only with a few clients, charge more, write more, and create digital products. Importantly, I began valuing my mental health, my marriage, and the joy in life above all else. I'm now writing my book, Dare to Escape, Break Free from the Rat Race and Create Your Ideal Life. And last month, I achieved my most profitable month ever by age 45. So what is my biggest lesson from all of this? Sometimes stepping back is the best way forward. It's crucial to align your work with your values and what brings you joy.
So stepping back to reassess can really help. That's what Anth goes into here, if you have the means to do that. And I think I loved how it motivated him to, choose things like, I'm going to take on fewer clients, I'm going to charge more, I'm going to write more, I'm going to create digital products. And he then moved on to writing a book that was about breaking free from the rat race, which I think he's still writing. It's coming out soon. But recently had his most profitable month ever. So
yeah,
I love that idea of stepping back sometimes and getting that clarity can really help inform, your next step in your freelance career.
exactly. Because I think you sort of get stuck on that sort of hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And you often know, like, you're working for a client that's too stressful, not paying you enough, whatever, really demanding, ringing you late at night, whatever.
Yeah.
But you seem to get stuck and it's hard to extricate yourself. So what Anth did of just taking yourself away, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need a weekend. I mean, he spent 4 months traveling the world and going to Vietnam, but it doesn't have
He
to be.
He really did it on a grand scale.
Yeah. But a weekend or a week.
Respect, Amph. But it's so true what you say about, giving yourself that time to process. That really rings true because I've just finished Essentialism again, which is Greg McKeown's book. And he talked about this guy who stayed in a job for 5 years because he was so busy and so wrapped up in, everything regarding the job. He never actually had a chance to take that time to look at, the job itself and how he could extricate himself from it. So, yeah, we can all fall into that in freelancing as well.
I think so too. I mean, I must admit that when I've gone back into journalism and I've gone into offices and stuff like that and seen them, they're all stuck on hamster wheels. I feel like, I'm such an evangelist about freelancing and how the freedom it is. But I think that you can get stuck in these jobs that you hate, that you are not being paid enough, and the demands are increasing. And it happens a lot, particularly with media these days. And I think that you can get stuck in without actually realizing there's another opportunity. And that's what freelancing is good. We've had a couple of people on the podcast who've left full-time jobs, freelanced, got comfortable, and then gone back into a job, but they now know, they recognize the triggers, they recognize the red flags. And and freelancing is a great way of getting perspective.
Well, I really love our next listener is Caitlin Wright, a copywriter, and she experienced, I think this was another COVID butt kicking, where she suddenly became the breadwinner of the family.
And she just come back from maternity leave, she says,
gosh,
in March
double
2020.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Wright. I'm a copywriter and journalist for brands and organisations that care for others. When freelancing kicked me in the ass was March 2020. I was coming back from maternity leave with my third child and I had a few clients and I was going to work my way up gradually, but COVID had other ideas. My husband got made redundant, the kids got sent home from school and I lost all my clients. So suddenly I was the breadwinner with no money coming in. But what I did was worked out who I was as a freelancer and what I was offering. And it meant that when the work did start flowing in a few months later, I was in a much better position and I was able to work with clients that align with my goals, which meant that I was much happier and earning better money than ever before.
Okay, so in Caitlin's case, as we mentioned, she was suddenly the breadwinner. Her husband was out of work. But I loved how she talked about, how she turned this around. She really scrutinized who she wanted to be working for and carved out a business around that. And they do say that when you niche down or choose a specialty, that can make you more valuable to clients. You know that better than I do, being a generalist.
But also one of the things that she said, that she really looked at who she was working with and she wanted clients that aligned with her goals, which is another thing about that sort of burnout. Because when you're working with companies that you don't like, you're not comfortable with what they're doing, or you're not interested in what they're doing, that adds stress and burnout, doesn't it?
Well, and we have a couple of listeners coming up who all had similar stories, a little bit different, but really, really interesting. The first one, and it's around taking on too much work or suddenly having too much work, which sounds like a really great problem to have.
Yeah, until you have it.
As we're going to hear, it's sometimes not. So we're going to start with Susan Rioch.
Hi, I'm Susan Rioch, founder of the UX Copywriter, and I'm a website copywriter. And the time that freelancing really kicked me in the ass was when I took on too many projects at the same time. They were giant projects, and I found myself working from the crack of dawn to way past midnight, working on the weekends, just trying to juggle all the client demands. Since that time, I have been really strong in my boundaries, and I haven't taken on more work than I can handle, and I trust that when the time is right, an opportunity will present itself.
Oh, look, I can totally relate to this ass kicking that Susan experienced. I honestly think one of the biggest learning curves as a freelancer, and one I'm still learning, is working out how to manage your schedule and not taking on too much. You can get really excited about projects and think, I can fit that in. Maybe I'll have to work on a Saturday, but I really want to do that. I really want to work with that client. But yeah, see burnout above.
Yes. I think what I've often learned out is that I've often made assumptions on my client's behalf. So somebody asked me to write a blog post, say, and I'm really slammed. And I say, sure. And I'm thinking, I could probably get it to them Wednesday because I could work on Sunday, blah, blah, blah. And now, of course, I say, I can get it to you Friday next week. And inevitably, it's been really rare that somebody said no. I just assume they want it earlier than,
Yes,
so I say, that sounds great. Love to. That your thing, yes, and yes. And I can get it to you by this. And often I pitch it through a double day or two after I think I can get it, just in case something goes wrong, or I get it ready and then I send it on the day.
Yeah, and the other thing that Susan mentioned is how she learned to create those really strong boundaries.
Yeah.
And that comes into it, not taking on more than you can handle, really recognizing that if you're getting lots of offers of work, it's okay to say no. It's okay to refer that on. More will be coming your way.
Oh, okay to say I can't do it by then, but I can do it by this time.
Exactly. Like I very rarely, this is sorry to all my editors who might be listening, but they will know that I will often say, I'm so sorry, I can't file by that date. But if you still want, if you can, if there's any breathing space for it, I can get it to you a week later. And most of my editors say yes, because they've built in buffers. And if they've worked with me for a long time, they know they're not going to have to rework it,
Yeah.
And so, don't think that the deadline is an ultimate. Really, you can negotiate that. You can push back. You can say, this is where it will fit into my schedule. And clients appreciate that. And editors do too, and they're fine with it. As long as you ask at the beginning, at commissioning stage, I think.
But also boundaries, some of that is, somebody will say, we'll get all the material to you on Monday, and if you can get it back to us by the Friday, and you think that's great. And of course, the material doesn't arrive till Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
And that's the time to say, that's great, but I'll need until the following Tuesday.
Exactly.
Because their deadline is not your emergency.
Yes. Oh,
or
I
their
love
inefficiency.
that.
Yeah.
Can I have that on a poster for my birthday?
Because that's the thing. Sometimes we impose that and say, oh, thanks, but I've planned my time. Or you don't even have to say that you can just do your yes and yes. Yeah. And now with the revised time frame, I'll get it to you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got another listener who has a similar problem, and we'll let her tell you her story.
Hi, this is Monica Davidson from Creative Plus Business, and freelancing kicked me in the ass when I experienced success for the first time. I did a little marketing campaign, and all of a sudden I ended up with more clients than I could handle. And I know that sounds like a fantastic problem to have, but frankly, it was incredibly stressful and embarrassing. I had to contact all these people and say, I'm sorry, I can't do the work that I actively marketed myself to you for. It taught me the hard way. Be just as prepared for success as you are for failure.
Wow. So be just as prepared for success as you are for failure. I love that. I love that.
I wrote that down too, because that's sometimes a terrible shock. And that's a skill, and it's a really hard thing, because when you pitch everywhere or you've got lots of things, And sometimes people do change. You know, they say they'll have it on Monday and then they give it to you on the Friday and suddenly you've got 4 things that week because, you know, and
well, it goes to show, doesn't it, that, you know, we can be dubious or we can be cynical about marketing, but once you get that wheel turning, it can suddenly bear fruit, and it can be very overwhelming if everything comes to you all at once, like your SEO starts working, all your LOIs come back, you know, and say, yes, we're interested.
Or something that you've quoted on like 3 months ago, and then they said, oh yeah, the clients just agreed to this and they want to start next week. You think, oh shit.
So your marketing can suddenly, you know, be really successful. So it's something to be aware of. So our next listener also struggled when she had 9 clients, but she also learned an important lesson about discounting your prices. So let's hear what she had to say.
I really got a kick in the ass when I had too many clients. Not just 4 or 5, I had 9 clients and 1 me. It was during COVID lockdown and I took any work I could. I was working crazy hours and I'm not satisfied unless I've done a super great job. What did I learn? To manage my time, and that 9 clients is too many. I was super organised and I learned that I shouldn't offer discounts, which I had done to get some clients across the line when really I didn't need to. I also learned that when you discount, those clients undervalue what you do and they become the pain in the ass client.
So whenever someone tries to bargain me down, I see that as a bit of a red flag, and more often than not, that person can become that pain in the ass client, as this freelancer found. I really agree with that.
I think so too. And that's what you learn, that usually the clients that want discounts and bargain you down don't really value your work. And that's a red flag. But that's the same. I've found that almost every time. And that's a lesson that we all learn, isn't it?
I think, the moral of the story here is stick to your prices, or if someone's trying to bargain you down so that you're more aligned with their budget, a really good way around that is to negotiate a change of scope. So you're not having to reduce your prices. So you might say, look, I can actually do 4 days for that price, not 5, or something like that. Or we reduce the project.
Always reduce your scope, not your budget, or not your prices.
Yes. And we have another interesting one on pricing, funnily enough.
My biggest lesson is also my worst experience. I was on my dream freelance job on a newspaper. I was in-house, and one day my editor came and berated me in front of everyone and told me to pack up and go because I hadn't been charging my articles correctly. It was utterly devastating, but it taught me at the time that anytime there's any money issues or anything to do with money ever raised, you need to get it sorted. You need to have a contract in place. Everyone is crystal clear on what you're being paid and how you're being paid and when you're being paid. I highly recommend anyone who is freelancing or starting out to make sure that anything to do with money is 100% crystal clear.
Wow. I mean, listening to this, I just want to bop that editor. What a nasty piece of work.
Exactly. Being sort of hauled out in public is just never right. I really dislike that. It made me feel very upset on her behalf.
Yeah, me too. I do think that's a whole other podcast episode, really. But the lesson that this freelancer took away from it was making sure that money issues are hammered down and that you know exactly what you're being paid, and there are contracts and all of that
processes
in place.
Are really clear. I think also when you start freelancing, sometimes we're a little uncomfortable with talking about money. And that's why I really love all those online accounting programs like Rounded, because it's actually becomes the software makes you look professional, and it's got all the things, and it makes you say, I'll send you a quote, I'll send you an invoice, and it does all that, and it sort of becomes less personal. It's just a process rather than, and it takes that, for me, the personal out of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's also a bit of a mindset thing where if you can divorce yourself from the process and think of yourself like a business, you know, I'm a business, this is a business conversation, you know, it becomes easier and easier the more that you do it. Like I had a negotiation with a client this week, actually, who, you know, wanted to, well, actually, I sent my price just in an email instead of doing a formal quote because I wasn't really sure if we were going to be aligned on price. And they wrote back something like for the week. That's your price for the week. And I thought, okay, this is going to go south. I'm losing this client, which is fine. You know, like if someone doesn't want to pay you, that's right. And then that client came back and said, well, I was actually thinking I was budgeting for this. And it was very close to my price. And he said, how about, would you reduce just a little bit and we'll pay you the month in advance, which I thought was, you know, and they wanted to hire me for 3 months. And I actually thought that was quite, you know, I'm still slightly reducing my prices, but they have met me halfway and I'm getting, you know, the whole month in advance. So, yeah, it's things like that, isn't it?
It is. It definitely is. And you got to make it work for you.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to talk about our next listener is someone who you'll all know from Rachel's list.
So Claire, the wonderful Claire. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Yes.
Hey guys, it's Claire here. I thought I'd drop you a voice memo to let you know that I think freelancing kicks you in the arse every single day. And if it wasn't for my network of other freelancers and clients and just people who I can trust, then I would question what I'm doing all of the time. So it's people like Rach. It's people like my clients who support and listen to me. And it's the gold community.
Aww.
Isn't she lovely?
She's so lovely. I mean, she makes a really important point, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Like freelancing is hard yakka, and it's even harder if you don't have a community around you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, well, I had an issue with a client last week, as you know. We talked about that off air. I won't go into it again. But I was just trying to work out, some of it was my fault and some of it was hers. And I put a couple of questions in the gold group and I got some really interesting feedback. A lot of people sympathizing, a lot of people saying, actually, she was probably right about that. And I think, first of all, I learned a good lesson and I could, I guess, put it out to my colleagues. So sort of, because if you've come from an office, you'd often discuss these things in the office kitchen, that
having
sort
a
of stuff.
coffee. Yeah.
And having a community of freelancers means that you can sort of discuss. I've learned some of my best tips. I know people always want to know what to charge, but I've also learned about great programs. I've just been starting to use Descript instead of Otter, which is somebody mentioned in the gold group, and I just love it. It's so much better. You've got to get on that one, Rach. But I've learned lots of different things, different ways. I've got good sources here and there. It's just so good.
I agree with you. I actually think my whole world opened up when I created that Rachel's List community. Yeah. Before that, I mean, we had a bit of a community, we had some events and everything, but that completely changed everything. And yeah, I love having all that knowledge. It's like having all this incredible knowledge in the room from so many different freelancers. And a lot of them are very senior and know so much more than I do about different things and vice versa. And we all help each other. It's just incredibly valuable for your career, isn't it? It's amazing. So
I also think that sometimes people are reluctant to talk to other freelancers. There's that whole scarcity mentality that if I share a contact or I do this, there's less work for me. And I've found it's the opposite.
It is absolutely the opposite.
The more work I've given to other people, the more work I've got back. And generally it's made my work better. And I always share contacts and things like that. And it's only come back to support me. And most people, it makes me look good if I refer a good freelancer to a former client or to an editor that's asked.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Claire. We love you and we're glad that you love the community because it does help you manage the ups and downs and not feel so alone. I was really interested by this listener coming up because it's about something that I think is important, but it can take us a while to figure out, and that is having systems and how that helps you and your efficiency. So let's listen to her story.
Almost 20 years ago, I had a crack at freelance writing, and I spent 2 weeks on one story involving multiple phone interviews, reading a book, trotting to my regional university library to read reports and peer-reviewed journals, earning just $200. I knew it was that fee when I started, but I had no idea it would take that long to write to the brief for that National Farming Journal. I didn't have any filters, systems or boundaries. I just said yes. So I went back to wage slave work, then 8 years ago, dove back into full-time freelancing for good. I keep increasing my income, developing and fine-tuning my systems.
Wow. I mean, over-researching. How many times have we over-researched and then you spend all your time doing that and before you know it, that commission or whatever, that project is no longer financially viable. So that's one thing here that I thought was really interesting.
I also think that's a trap when you've come from an in-house job.
Yeah.
Where you can do that.
You have oodles of time to research.
And people say, can't you, and if you go to the library and spend an extra 5 hours to confirm something you already know, don't value your time.
But I really loved how this freelancer used that experience to kind of take stock, set boundaries and create systems so she could make sure she was using her time more effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that often with certain editors who basically want to charge you a base rate, but want all the things from the high rate. So they'll say, can you just write this blog post that's only 500 words? Sure. And do you mind adding in some keywords and some SEO? And do you also mind putting some hashtags or a bit of a social media post and this and all this stuff, that scope creep?
And maybe get an interview, get some quotes in there for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
all
also
of that adds up.
maybe I think we need because I had one recently where I did it and they wanted this particular publication covers Australia and New Zealand and they wanted stats from both, which is fine. But when I put it in, they also wanted a source from New Zealand, which actually took quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to account for all that when you're a freelancer in a way that you don't have to do necessarily when you're on staff. So
exactly.
It is a big learning curve when you start to freelance and you've come from the journalism world or in-house.
Or even in, if you're in-house doing corporate comms and you need to get an extra round of approval because the CEO is being particular or it has to go through legal, you sort of get used to that and don't think about it. But as a freelancer, that extra round, that extra tweaking, that's quite a lot of extra work.
It's a few hours. Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, our next listener is talking about unpaid invoices, something close to all our hearts. So let's hear what she has to say.
Hello, I'm Teresa Miller, former journalist, now media and presentation skills trainer. At the moment, I'm having a cash flow crisis. I have a lot of unpaid invoices out there. It'll probably be a month before they're paid. So during this time, I try not to panic, try and rein my spending in. I ring around old clients and see if they need a quick turnaround, media trainer refresher. But I've also created some online content, an online course, which hopefully will iron out some of these peaks and troughs in my bank balance in the future.
Unpaid invoices. So much stress.
Yeah, so much stress. But it's pretty rare that I have them now. I think that the systems are better. I have to say having an online accounting system makes it better because it's just done and and people are set up. I think when you had to sort of sit aside, down and sort of do all your invoices at the end of the week, I actually do them as I finish a story now. I have a system.
Yeah.
And I have a Trello card for each job and each one of them has an action point on my checklist, invoice.
Wow.
And I know if I haven't invoiced because I haven't ticked that box.
Organized.
No, I think there's nothing worse than realizing a month or two that you haven't invoiced, or you go to chase it up and realize that you have an invoice in the first place. But also having it online means you think, I invoiced this, 30 days ago and they should have paid. That's the thing, because it's so easy to get unpaid invoices lost in your thing.
Well, I really liked the measures that Teresa talks about in her story. Like, of course, you have to follow up. You have to send reminders for invoices and all that. But also, she's really thinking, well, what else can I do to kind of streamline my cash flow? And she's creating courses and other income streams. And I think that can really help. It's a really smart way if you're finding...
It is.
Yeah.
And I think because I do a lot of work for corporates and they tend to have those 30-day cash things. So I always try and do a few little jobs that give you some income each week. So I might get a big chunk of money at the end of the month, at the end of 30 days. But obviously it's really hard to manage that cash flow. So it's nice to just do a $600 job every now and again for a smaller client and with shorter payment terms. It's
I
a balance.
Okay, well, our next listener is Emma Lovell.
Yeah.
And I think we're talking about marketing. Very important. This is coming up at the summit again this year. I think Brooke McCarthy is going to be
talking about marketing.
Yeah, how you can create a freelancer marketing plan that you can actually stick to, which is, hard sometimes.
But but I think it just becomes, you have to work and systemize it so it goes into your regular way of doing things. So let's hear from Emma.
Hi, my name is Emma Lovell and I'm a business travel life coach and I'm currently writing a book. Freelancing really kicked me in the ass when I didn't plan my future scope. So living on the feast or famine cycle and just taking on a bunch of work, getting through it, and then having no pipeline of work and having to scurry around. So if I can give any guidance to future freelancers, it's to continuously market and promote so that you have a pipeline of ongoing leads and ongoing work. That would have helped me a lot in my early years to not ride that feast or famine roller coaster quite so severely.
Oh, feast or famine.
I know.
We all struggle with that. I don't know if I really struggle with it now, but I certainly did. But I love this, like keep marketing, keep filling your pipeline. Don't resort to panic marketing, which we've written about on the Rachel's List blog, if you wanted to search for that. It's a really great lesson from Emma, I think.
I think also one of the tips that I remember from my early days is that you can be really busy, which goes back to some things we discussed before. And when you get really busy, you forget to market.
Yeah.
And actually that's when you should be marketing, because I remember having a really crazy period and sending my last piece off and sitting there thinking, oh my God, I've got nothing
for next week. Yeah.
And so we've all learned that pipeline is so important.
And we talked about that recently on a recent episode with Prerna Malik from Content Bistro. We talked about that need to do that evergreen marketing and keep that marketing wheel turning. And I think our next freelancer had a similar experience, and it was basically motivated by a month in which she earned $180 in total. Let's hear what she had to say.
After a successful corporate career, I accepted that I was starting again when I became a freelance writer. However, my low point came a couple of years in when one month I only made $189. This was the huge kick in the pants I needed. At that moment, I got very crystal clear about working on my business. I started marketing consistently and scheduling time for business development, whether I had client work or not. I'm grateful to say it worked, and I've been steadily booked several weeks in advance ever since.
So again, this, brings us back to marketing, how important it is. It really is the key to, a steady cash flow.
And marketing doesn't have to be this whole bells and whistles, paid ads on Facebook thing.
No.
Or it can be just as simple as doing a post on LinkedIn every Monday or every Wednesday or something.
Or blogging for business and getting those keywords in, optimizing your website, Yeah,
updating your website. Just a couple of little things, putting a social media post out there. It's just can be a little minor thing. It doesn't have to be the big, like the whole sitting down full campaign either.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we've almost come to the end of the episode, but we have our last freelancer who also suffered an empty pipeline and found a solution. This is a great one for journos. So we'll end with John Burford.
Hi there, this is John Burford. I've been a freelancer for 23 years as a journalist, copywriter, and occasionally university teacher. I've always said that freelancing has treated me pretty well, but last year I faced a period where I had no work, as in a completely clear slate, and nothing seemed to be coming down the pipeline. So I have a philosophy that I often speak about called pitch, don't bitch. If you don't have any work, then don't whine about it, get busy pitching. So I had to follow my own advice, and that's exactly what I did. I pitched like an absolute crazy man for about 2 weeks to pretty much everybody I could think of and anybody that I have done work for in the past 5 years. A lot of it journalism, a lot of it copywriting. And at the end of that 2 weeks, the commission started to roll in. But the most important lesson was to keep the pitching going. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And thankfully, I've been pretty busy. So if work is slow, pitch, don't bitch. And that does work.
We've always loved John's little catchphrase of pitch, don't bitch. I mean,
I know,
it's awesome.
He's been on the podcast a couple of times.
One on pitching.
Yes, he did. So this is an important lesson. Keep pitching. It opens doors. It gets commissions rolling in. But I think the key here is you might have to do lots more of it than you expected to do if you're in a slow patch or you've dropped the ball on your marketing, which can happen to all of us. And it brings us back to Ed's point as well. You've got to persevere. You've got to keep trying. You have to keep tapping into your networks, and eventually things will start to move again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I do have, when we talked about Trello, a card, I have actually a pitching card.
Ooh.
And so if I have an idea, sometimes it just, and I don't have time to do with it, I put it under pitch, pitch to this magazine, pitch to this corporate, whatever. And sometimes if I am looking like my pipeline's a bit quiet, I'll go in there and I'll get some ideas.
You use Trello like I use To Do, which is like my sort of online to-do list. But it's very similar to Trello in a way. I've got lists for everything. Yeah.
I have a card for every single project and a list for each client. So I have something like, so my big client CSR, I might have 4 projects working on them at different stages, and I'll have one and they've all got deadlines, and that pops up when Trello sends me a note, but I usually know. And it means that when somebody emails me and asks me for something to do, sometimes I'm 3 weeks out. So I stick it into Trello immediately so I never forget, and I don't have a last minute panic thinking, oh my God, I forgot about that story, which is that's why I started it. Yeah, that works really well for me.
And you've got a pitching card as well.
Yeah,
so you can put all your stories in, and then you could tick it off if you pitched it and say who you pitched it to and that sort of thing.
And I just have one for podcasts, like ideas for podcast guests. But most of it's clients. And then I also see, sometimes I put something in that people just, like I might quote and they say, oh, we're thinking about doing this. And I just put it in. And then I think, oh, they never did get back to me. And I say, oh, I'll send them a follow-up email saying, are you still working on that project? Would you like any help? Did you want some information? And often it jolts them into coming back to me as well.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much to all our listeners who sent in their stories. This has been really interesting.
So interesting.
We loved hearing about your ass-kicking moments and the lessons that you learned from them. And we hope that if you're out there listening to these, that you've picked up a few little nuggets of knowledge and gold in how you want to, change aspects of your own freelance business. So let us know what you think. Drop us a review or a rating where you listen to the podcast, and we'll mention in the show notes all these people so you can follow them and connect with them, unless they were anonymous and they don't want you to follow or connect with them.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software that helps freelancers run their business with confidence.
And don't forget, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, you can check your welcome emails for an exclusive discount code on the annual subscription rate. You can also find it in the private Facebook Gold group, or just contact us at hello@rachelslist.com.au.